Welcome to the Mind Rebel podcast, where each episode is a guided exploration or conversation designed to move you forward toward clarity, truth, and the wisdom within you that knows the way. I'm Taryn Watts, founder of the Mind Rebel Academy, home of the revolutionary Mind Rebel method, where we guide people through deep personal transformation programs and also train and support world-class coaches. I'm joined here by my dear friend and co-host, Theriault. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to episode 43 of the podcast. Can you believe we've done 43 podcast episodes together? No. So this podcast was formerly known as the Bold Dreams Held Loosely podcast and now has officially been reborn as the Mind Rebel podcast. So this is actually episode 2 of our new evolution. And if you caught the last episode, how to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be, you'll know that we're doing things a little bit differently inside of our podcast. And we're taking people on these coaching explorations that we designed prior to the podcast. We received such an outpouring of love and support after our first episode in this new chapter. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much. Every single message, every share, every note of encouragement, it means more to us than you could possibly know. We read every single one, and it's just made us feel like, okay, like we finally found our groove here. And we're just so excited to keep creating these episodes. So this podcast is our way of sharing the power of coaching and going through deep explorations. It's our way of sharing this with the world. And if these episodes resonate with you and serve you, the most generous way that you can thank us is by helping us grow, by subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment on our YouTube version of this episode. That really helps us reach more people like you who are ready for this kind of deep exploration. All right, so this episode, this exploration is all about discovering your unique genius. And this is something that, Michelle, you and I have been talking about for quite some time now. Unique genius is a bit of a buzzword. In fact, a couple days ago, I was like, do we want to rename this to your unique gifts or just something that isn't as buzzy as unique genius? And then when we really dove into this exploration and we uncovered our own discoveries, by the end of that process, I was like, no, this is a genius. And there is a genius. It feels bold to say, I have a unique genius, But my goodness, is it ever true? Every single one of us is encoded with this unique genius inside. And it's not something you do externally or you have to cultivate or get better at or build. It's actually something so innate inside of you. It's been with you since you were young, and it's evolved and grown over the years, maybe even suppressed and shamed for many of us. But uncovering what your unique genius is really, really, really profound. And so that's what this whole exploration is all about, is helping you to uncover it and really name that for yourself so that you can begin to, knowing what your unique genius is and knowing how that expresses in various outlets of your life. That's really important information and really important clues that lead you towards happiness, towards fulfillment, towards alignment, towards purpose. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
When we first stumbled across this phrase and it piqued our interest, unique genius, I think it instantly grabbed both of us as a powerful concept. There was a part of me that really lit up inside at the idea that I did have a unique genius for multiple reasons. One, what a beautiful, lovely, expansive way to view yourself. It's the gift we give others so often, holding them in a light of, just positive regard and compassion and awe and wonder. I think it's a gift we give to others so often, and more rare when we give ourselves that own gift. And so it just instantly feels good when you tap into that energy of looking at yourself with that own lens. So energetically and instinctively, I think I could feel what a good, powerful thing that was to look at myself this way. And I think it also, I felt really drawn to exploring this concept and naming my unique genius because I think I spent so much of my life in doubt that I had anything really special about me that actually contributed to the world in a meaningful way. It's not that I thought I had nothing special about me. I just thought, oh, well, my special qualities are, I don't know, maybe nice for me or nice for my parents or nice for my kids, but they don't contribute to the world in a meaningful way. They're not going to make impact in the world that will help others. My qualities aren't going to make me money. They're just, cute little sweet things about me. And so this idea that maybe I could name my unique genius, and it was more than something the people who loved me thought was cute and special about me, but something I could tap into and express more of and harness and honor in a way that really helped me live my life from a place of alignment and feel that I have something to give that's of worth and valuable. That felt really good and really healing. And it feels really good. We've been exploring this sort of iteratively, and scratching the surface of this concept wasn't really enough for us. We kept craving more and more and more to get to the heart of something so powerful, put our finger on, not just name our unique geniuses, but like really viscerally understand what they are and how we operate. And I'm so pleased with where we took this exploration. I feel like we took an idea that, we didn't create the idea of unique genius, but we took this idea that we heard. And I love the exploration we've created to sink down through the layers and really understand it. Because I don't think it's an easy thing to do. Just say, oh, what's my unique genius? And answer the question. I do not think it's that easy. It wasn't that easy for me. I don't think it was that easy for you either. And I feel like this exploration we're about to talk about really helps with the problem of kind of being too used to yourself to even be able to see the answer here. Do you remember what you said to me so long ago when I was, in coach pathway and you were training me to be a coach? We had a one-on-one and you were explaining why sometimes it's hard for people to see what they're exceptional at in the realm of coaching. Do you remember what you said to me there? No, okay.
No, I don't remember.
Oh, you said something along the lines of, so what do you think you did so well in this coaching session? Like, what do you think your strengths are? And I might have named a couple of things and you were like, oh, it's so funny. The things that you're so exceptional at are just normal to you because they come easily to you. So you don't value them as exceptional. And then so you reflected all sorts of things you thought were, exceptional that I did in that coaching session. And it's true, when you reflected some of those things back, I had this like shy little timid feeling of like, well, that's not that special. That's just, of course I did that. And so if you don't have the benefit of having someone so attuned to you and reflecting, your powerful, genius, lovely qualities, I really feel like this exploration can help you pull back some of those layers to see what your unique genius really is.
And it's so true that because our unique genius is not something we've had to build or try harder to do, it's typically so innate inside of us that we could miss it if we're not asking ourselves these questions or being reflected back by someone who can see you. You could miss it. You could completely miss it. And the danger in missing it is that you walk around the world not knowing what is uniquely brilliant and special and genius, literally like genius about you. And the power of naming it is then you can start to reorganize your life around that. Because you expressing your unique genius in the world, whether that's through any outlet of life, vocation, parenthood, community, friendships, whatever, when you know what your unique genius is, you can build your life around that. And that brings you success in however you measure success in each of those outlets. But uncovering your unique genius and expressing it for more and more minutes of your day in your life equals success, right? Like, how could it not? And so, understanding what it is, it's like a veil lifts and you understand, oh, that's why I've absolutely loved doing these tasks, these activities, these roles. And that's why I've absolutely detested doing these other things that were such a wrong fit for my unique genius. So when you know it, you can express it more. And that just leads to so much more fulfillment and so much more joy. And it also leads to more success in whichever way you define that. Okay, so we've designed this exploration in 4 steps. We're going to walk you through this step by step. And of course, we'll also share what surfaced for us along the way. And us sharing is just simply a way to model what it looks like when you give yourself the time, the space, the energy to really sink into these questions, and the depth of the clarity that can surface through the depth of coaching inquiries like these. So we've also created a digital workbook to help you take this exploration even deeper. So think of the digital workbook as a coaching companion. So Michelle and I have both brought our own unique genius to the table when crafting these coaching companions. And every single inquiry, every single question inside was created with so much care, with so much intention. It's honestly like having us right there with you, guiding you through the process. So inside this workbook, you'll find the exact reflection questions that we used on ourselves in this work. And these questions might seem simple, but they truly hold the power to shift and uncover things inside of you when you meet them with honesty. And the beauty of this workbook is that it's digital, meaning that it's something that you can return to over and over and over again. And every time you do, it reveals something new, like another layer revealed, like a clear sense of direction, a part of you that's ready and waiting to be seen. So again, if this conversation ignite something up in you and you're feeling that nudge of curiosity, this workbook is where you can take this exploration to a whole new level. And you can grab the workbook through the link in the show notes. All right, let's dive in. So the first step is to gather clues from what's always been true in the entirety of your life. Again, your genius is not something that you're building or that you need to get better at or that you need to like refine and hone your skills around your genius. It's actually something that you remember. It's already encoded inside of you. So this first step is an invitation to slow down, to reflect, and let's look back at where your genius may have been quietly shining or trying to shine through all along, even if you didn't recognize it. It's actually, especially if you didn't recognize it at the time. Let's start with uncovering the misunderstood parts of you. So these are the aspects of yourself that may have been judged or may have been dismissed by others or maybe just by yourself. And so the inquiry here is to ask yourself, what parts of yourself have you tried to hide or tone down or outgrow in order to fit into your surroundings? And then the follow-up inquiry is, what if those exact parts are the very key to your deepest strengths?
You know, everybody is going to relate to this journey of exploration into their own genius a little bit differently. Different people are going to find different sections or different questions more powerful or clarity inducing than others. And I think a lot of that depends on, gosh, your life, your personality, your experiences, the way you've viewed yourself. But for me, this first step of looking at all of the things I judged about myself, all of the things I thought were too much, all of the things I thought were flawed, all of the things that didn't match the way other people were or the way other people thought I should be, exploring these things about myself with a little lens of curiosity of what if there could be something to these parts I've always felt ashamed of. This was the most important part of this exploration for me. This was the foundation that unlocked all of the other insights and made them possible to come through. Honestly, one of the most healing things that came for me was being able to really lovingly and fully kind of re-accept, reintegrate all of those parts of me that I still slightly judged. One thing that's so clear to me after this whole exploration is that if we all have a unique genius, we're all going to have very different ways we work, very different qualities to us. And I can really see how me admiring the traits or qualities that the world valued, I can really see how it made me judge my own qualities and not see how powerful, genius, brilliant my own innate qualities were. And I have an inkling that a lot of people do that. You know, it's so tempting when you're young to try to fit a mold and fit in and be a way that others celebrate. And so I think there is so much important information resting inside of the things you most judged about yourself, you most tried to change about yourself, you most tried to suppress. I think there is wildly valuable information inside of these things.
I know that this section was so meaningful to you. What were some of the discoveries, like some of the things that you unpacked here?
Yeah, there were a few things. The first one was how sensitive I am. my extreme sensitivity. I think about the number of times someone in my life has directly told me or implied I'm being too sensitive. If you gave me like a penny for each of those times, I'd probably have $1 million. You know, it's like such a theme my whole life. Like, ooh, you are being way too sensitive. Or just like, you know, the look on someone's face of like being baffled of like, what are you going on about? Why are you so dramatic? So like my sensitivity is the number of times I thought to myself throughout my life, why am I so sensitive? You know, which also kind of sounded like, why am I so weak? What's wrong with me? Why aren't I tough enough? Why aren't I stronger? Why don't I have the energy to get over this? Why don't I have the, you know, you name it. So that was a really big one. But I had already started, before we dug into this exploration, I had already started to have an inkling about that. Like, oh, what if my sensitivity is part of my superpowers? But, you know, coming back this time just solidified it so strongly for me. Some other corners that came up were that I've always needed so much more rest than everybody else. And I've never considered that as something, maybe I've started to just accept that as not something horrible, but never did I consider that could also possibly be a way I was designed that could allow me to have some sort of genius that maybe not everybody has. Never have I ever thought that before. So just this part of me that has never been able to keep up with other people's energy, never been able to keep up with output, other people's pace of work. I've always really judged that about myself. And so that was another piece that I kind of was able to pull closer and go, oh, what if there's a wisdom to this thing that I've worked so hard just to, you know, barely accept? And the last little piece that came through was how much I want, how much I desire. My whole life, I've had these really, really strong yearnings, like that could almost drive me crazy from like how badly something in me is like aching or yearning or wanting something. And I mean superficial things, emotional things, deep things, like life situations, you name it. I want very intensely. And I've judged that because I think about all of the even like spiritual messages you hear, about detachment and, being happy with what you have, or accepting life as it is, accepting others as they are. I feel like I've heard and really wanted to aspire to that idea that I thought was, I don't know, like an elevated idea, a spiritual idea. But the reality of my insides have been deep, deep, unrelenting wants, desires, cravings for things that I've just never been able to shake. And I've very often judged that part of me and wondered if I was greedy, immature. It's like, how do I shake this part of me to just find peace? It was a piece of me I thought, to get to peace, to get to alignment, to get to whatever enlightenment is out there, this is a piece of me I'm going to have to figure out how to tone down or shake. And through this piece of the exploration, these were the pieces that really came to the forefront. And I was really able to start seeing, wait a minute, if I just hang on to curiosity for a minute and hold these in this different lens, like I can start to see the like really encoded wisdom in these qualities about me. That is so healing. That is all so expansive. And I'm starting to see the pieces of me in a brand new way. I've never seen them before. It's almost like how I imagine, when people say that like God or the universe loves you and thinks you're perfect. I think this part of the exploration gave me a hint of like what I think that actually means. All these parts of you that you think are bad. I think I tapped into that energy of, I think this is the way that a loving God, a loving universe might see me. That feels so powerful.
Michelle, I can feel how deep that section went for you and like the insights that emerged. For me, it was more like, oh yeah, that's what was happening then. Or, it wasn't as profound as your experience. So I feel a little silly even sharing mine. But in a nutshell, I would say that when I looked at my past and the different ways that I've judged myself or tried to make myself fit in, it was really in environments and in situations and with people where what I now understand is that these environments, situations, people, conversations, like lacked this depth or meaning or like soulfulness that I crave so deeply. And so what that looked like, growing up or in jobs or, in certain friendships or in certain friendship circles is I really like struggled to belong. And like I remember in a corporate job I was once in, I remember thinking for a very long time I was there, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I muster up the passion to want to solve these problems or want to do really well in this work? Like, I can't, there's not an ounce of me that could muster up the passion for it. And for a while I was wondering, am I just like, do I not want to work? Am I just not a passionate person? And like, that could not be farther from the truth, right? But I didn't know that then. Same thing with, just different, even just like in conversations, like I'm really awkward in small talk. It just sucks the life out of me. I am exhausted after small talk conversations. There's nothing wrong with it. It just exhausts me. Versus a conversation where I am like touching the depths of a human and they are touching the depths of my soul and we're in like this deep conversation with one another. I leave conversations like that feeling so fulfilled, so aligned, so energized. But I didn't know that then. When I was younger, I just felt like I'm awkward. I lack passion. I cannot muster up the energy to be successful in the workplace. And so maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I just like, it was all those stories that I built up. But what I realized was I literally have an intolerance for anything that lacks depth and soul. Just like I can't do it. I just cannot do it. And that's what my body was trying to signal to me in all those scenarios. But it actually wasn't until I found coaching and the craft of coaching and then applying the craft of coaching on myself did I really realize that, oh, like I remember when I first came to coaching and really like realized what this craft was, like the true art of it. I remember saying, this was literally designed for me. This is a craft designed for my unique blueprint. I never, ever, ever experienced anything like that before. And that was my first little taste of it. And then when I tasted it and I tasted the alignment I felt in that craft, in that art form, and then used the coaching principles on myself to like give myself all that delicious, connection, that's when I started to realize, oh, those old worlds were just simply not a fit for me. This is what I need. I crave depth. I crave soul. I crave vulnerability. I crave realness. And anything that is not that, I can't tolerate it. So again, looking back and examining what parts of yourself have you been ashamed of? What parts of yourself have you tried to hide, suppress, change, tone down to fit in? And go in with that sense of curiosity around like, what if those parts are the very key, or at least pointing you in the right direction, like little breadcrumbs on a trail, giving you little clues as to what your unique genius really is. After you've reflected on that, there's a second part to this that I want to touch on. And that's just simply looking at and paying attention to the qualities that have followed you throughout the years, like the ones that have shown up again and again and again, sometimes just in the background. In fact, often just kind of on autopilot in the background, these like really innate parts of you. But think about a season or a role in your life where you felt truly and fully alive, like deeply, deeply, deeply in your element. And then think about in that time, what came really naturally to you. So that's a really powerful question. So Michelle, when you asked yourself that question, what came up for you there?
Instantly, motherhood when my kids were babies came up for me. And I can see why. When my kids were little babies, there was this certain sense of me and my baby were my entire world. Like my universe existed really, I don't know, in this little bubble that like was really my home, or, around my bed or around my couch with me and my baby in it. And it was so much easier to tune out the rest of the world around me and just sink into my own little flow with me and my baby. And my intense sensitivity allowed me to be so attuned to this alien little creature and, find the common language or, feel into what was really present. And this need for so much rest, I actually was able to sink into that and let that guide me more than at any other time in my life, because my role was with this little baby who also just needed to sleep and be fed and cuddled. And I wasn't on someone else's external schedule. So I was able to thrive in that way. And this part of me that wanted and desired things so strongly, my desire in that phase was just the wildest, most intense devotion towards this pure little being. And I didn't judge that one. I didn't judge that I fiercely wanted to nurture this child and, give this child everything I wanted to give it. And so it was this unique moment in time where the other rules of society and life were just dampened, and I got to exist in this little bubble of motherhood and these qualities of sensitivity and emotionality and intense, fierce desire for something to be the way I want it to be. And these luxurious, actually, I was going to say luxurious cycles of rest, but that's not like, it's not entirely true that being with a newborn is luxurious cycles of rest. However, I got to follow my own cycles. I got to choose. It was like the one little moment in life where those were allowed to exist for me. And I can see how in that window of motherhood, when my kids were babies, before there were schedules for anything, I can see the way my natural qualities and tendencies were allowed to come to the surface more. And I can see that those things being allowed to live and breathe and take up more room and drive me, I can see now why that was one of my favorite phases. Like, having a newborn is so hard. It is so hard. But I look back most fondly of that time. Part of me still thinks, oh, I would love another baby. I would love to be in that time again. That's not really true. We don't really want another baby, but it was such an aligned time for me because those parts of me were allowed to just swim and breathe and express. And so I have like the fondest memories. And it's the one and only thing and time that I was able to call on that came through so clearly of, oh, this is a time I was thriving, or this was the time where something came so naturally to me. I didn't have to learn about, no one had to tell me about. This came naturally to me.
It's interesting. I knew you when you had little babies. And when you say you were in your element, you were in your element. I was not in my element in that stage of motherhood. I've been in my element in other stages of motherhood, but that was not one. I was like itching for that stage to be over. But just like reflecting on this and like what you've uncovered about your unique genius, I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense why you thrived in that time, in such a challenging time.
It's really nice to put those pieces together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also chose motherhood, a season or a time where I did feel, and I do feel like deeply aligned, but it wasn't in the newborn stage. It was like far later when I was reflecting on it. It's not just motherhood, it's being a mother, being a wife. When I'm in my element in these roles of motherhood and being a wife is when I am so deeply attuned to the humans in my home after the newborn stage. But when my kids were toddler and beyond, it was like I could just like very intuitively know what was needed to create balance and harmony in their worlds. That thread continues through motherhood. I know when they need food. I know the kind of food that's going to nurture their body. I know when they need rest. I know the amount of stimulation and activity that, serves each of their unique blueprints. It's like not something I've ever read in a book. Both my children are wildly different. My husband is also wildly different from the two of them, but all of them live in my ecosystem. And it's like, I just know what is needed to create balance and harmony, both inside my home, even in the physical space of my home, and inside their beings. And I intuitively know how to do that for myself as well. I crave balance and harmony inside of myself, and I crave balance and harmony in my outer world. And so, an example, like when I'm in my element, is like when I can have deep, meaningful conversations with my kids or my husband, or in a coaching conversation, or with, friends, where I can hold space using my coaching skills and hold space for balance to be restored within them. Or when I can create, harmony and balance within my home, like a balanced schedule. And it just creates the environment for harmony to be restored within the people in my environment. And so again, that's why coaching felt like it was like this craft that was made for me, because it wasn't until coaching where I actually acquired the skills to be able to give that to others and to myself. It was confusing before. In fact, not only was it confusing, this desire for harmony has been innate inside of me. And without the skills of coaching, it actually led to some really codependent and unhealthy relationships in my past, where I would try to fix, save, heal people into being harmonious within themselves. And so without the right skill set, that was actually like a toxic quality that I had. And so these roles where I felt in my element, motherhood, when I could create that, like, being a wife, being a coach, being a teacher of these skills, running a business, the MRA is an opportunity for me to create balance and harmony, even as an entrepreneur. And that was really fun to reflect on as well.
You and I, when we think about times where we were really thriving, and and we think about what was coming naturally to us there, we have very different flavors, but also on the spectrum of how we're thriving, like there's some similar themes about relating to other people and this type of depth and attunement to others. When I pull back, I just want to sort of highlight that when I think about the people really close to me and the people around me, and I think about how and when they've most been thriving in their natural element, I see so many different types of examples. Like I think of, for some people I know, some of those things that come really naturally in times they're thriving could be just being so adventurous and brave. That could be, like a little ingredient in what's natural to them. For others, it's being able to see physical beauty and order and almost like a sense of feng shui. For others, it's a type of autonomy and freedom and directness. For others, I can see that times when they get to live in their minds and analyze data and harness the strength of their intellect. I can see so many different examples that look wildly different from ours. And I just want to point that out to make sure it's clear that times you're thriving don't always have to do with being with other people or your family or your children. This is just what happened to be for us.
Yeah, I was having a coaching session the other day, and this came up in our coaching conversation with my client and we uncovered her unique genius is creation, like creativity courses through her, and she's got to create something. And we were laughing because she's like, if you open my Canva account, you would see literally thousands of creations in there. And her problem has been she creates and then that's it. She might put it out, she might not. It might just sit in her Canva for years. And so what we realized in the session was, like, what she thought was wrong with her was that she couldn't follow through on the creation. And she has all sorts of stories that she created around why that was, whatever the stories are. But what we realized was, no, like, her unique genius is creation. And she could stay up all night doing these creations. When inspiration strikes, she has to get to her computer. She's also a coach. So whether it's like a coaching framework, or it's like a coaching exploration, or it's like a new idea she has, or a novel that she wants to write. So she's had this idea for a novel just spinning inside her head for years. And then it finally became so loud that she had to get to her computer. And she wrote and wrote and wrote for hours and days and birthed a novel in a couple of days. Like, it's mind-blowing what this woman can create. But her story has been, yeah, but I don't do anything with it. I don't follow through on it. And it's not that she's lazy. It's that her unique genius is to create. And with that wisdom, she was able to build systems inside of her business where someone else helps her with the follow through aspect. Someone else helps her, like, takes her creations and does whatever with it. There is an end point, or there is a home for wherever she wants these creations to be birthed. That was really cool. So again, has nothing to do with anybody else, but the uncover and the discovery of her unique genius has changed everything for her. Also changed where she's going to focus her energy in her business. So this is leading us into step 2 of this process. So after you've gathered some clues from your life and you've started to gather those breadcrumbs pointing you to what's always been true, what's always been consistent about you, it's time to go a little bit deeper. And it's time to see if we can name the heart of your genius. So again, your genius is not something you do. It's really something you are. It's someone you are. So I'm going to ask you a couple powerful inquiries that, the reflections of these inquiries can help you to go deeper and get to the heart of what your unique genius is. So think about, what are the things that absolutely energize you? And not like a hype energy kind of way, but in like that deep, steady way that actually, like, even the energy of it lingers even long after. It's like, what are the things that really energize you, that give you life? Think about the things that you're able to actually stay connected to, even when life feels overwhelming or when things are going wrong. Like, what are the things that you're able to continue to do? Like, what are the things that you're able to muster up the energy to continue to do, even when things are challenging? And then another inquiry is, what feels absolutely effortless to you, but is kind of a little bit mind-blowing to others that you do? And if that question doesn't land for you, maybe it's what feels effortless to you but leaves others feeling supported, seen, or inspired by you.
I found this part of the exploration very helpful to really start like spiraling in closer and closer to the heart of my unique genius. Because although, that first section of like integrating those judged parts of me, it really felt like the deepest and the most healing. And it gave me these building blocks of clues. Like, it still felt that naming it clearly as like one thing was elusive. And so I found this section of leaning into what's so easy for me? Like, what do I love doing? What am I able to do regardless if I'm happy, sad, tired? These are really important clues. There was another question that's, in our more thorough exploration, that was, if you could get paid for anything, what would you want it to be? And I let myself be so creative with that question, and I named a few really luxurious things. And I found those to be very, very important clues that didn't necessarily seem to be connected at the beginning, because when I was naming things like what's so easy and what would I want to be paid for, and, I named a lot of things all around my world. Like, I named things like, oh, I'd love to garden and drink coffee while watching my chickens. And I love to journal and read romance novels. Like, I let myself name all of those things because, when I think about being genuinely energized and like, oof, well, I could do this forever, those are the things that come up. And so I really let myself be honest about that. And even though I kind of knew, well, I don't think reading a romance novel is my unique genius, I still just let myself say the truth about those things if through all of these questions. And really, I was kind of, I don't know if I was surprised or not, but really at the end, when I kind of looked at all of the clues and the themes that existed through all of them, there were clues and themes that were really meaningful. And so I think this section is a really lovely sifting, feeling out part of the, overall journey to uncover your unique genius. And I think some of the really subtle, lovely, enjoyable, easy things are very, very, very important clues.
Asking myself the question, what things actually leave me feeling more energized after? So I wrote down coaching, deep conversations, holding space for alignment, meditating and feeling my own emotions and like coming into alignment myself, opportunities where I get to nurture my children and have deep conversations about their emotions and what they're feeling inside, and soulful conversations with my loved ones or my friends or students or clients. These are the things that when I have moments of my day like that, everything inside of me lights up. Everything inside of me, doesn't matter how tired I am, everything inside of me like wakes up. And I was like, okay, I mean, there's like a lot of, like listing all of that down, I can start to see like what are the commonalities in all of these things. And these are the exact activities or things that feel absolutely effortless to me but does truly leave other people feeling supported, seen, inspired in my presence. And so these are like more clues, more clues, more clues. And digging into this is where your genius really starts to take shape, because you're uncovering something, like you're uncovering the thread that is true in all of those things. So after some examination in this and just really sitting with that, I decided that my genius lives in the way I sense and restore harmony. If I can just articulate this and explain it a little bit deeper, I can walk into a room and sense whether harmony exists here or there is disharmony, and if my energy can help restore harmony or not. And in cases where it can't, I want to exit as fast as possible. But in cases where it can, and it's worthy of my energy to help restore harmony, that's where I thrive. That's where I want to be. And so the same is true with people. I sound like a broken record, but that's why I love coaching so much, is because when I'm holding space for a client, I have a sense or a knowing when someone is out of alignment within themselves. There's an innate way, and then there's the skills I've learned to be able to complement those innate ways of knowing how to guide someone home to themselves through coaching, through, deep conversations, through these outlets. It really came down to, it is as simple as that. I can sense when harmony is missing or distorted in any way, and I have a knack for knowing how it can be restored, whether that's in my physical environment, within myself, or with those that I, love and serve.
My clues from this section were a little more vague than yours. Like it took a little more eye squinting to really see the theme here for me. For example, I really had to sit with, well, what does gardening and being with my chickens and being outside have to do with, this sensitivity? And, when I think about how I was thriving when my kids were newborns, like how do these things connect? It was a little more vague. But when I really sat with it, the threads that emerged were, oh, I really, really, really love and am nourished by and gravitate towards those things that allow me to connect with and also process the depth of my sensitivity and the emotions that it stirs up inside of me. And also those things that give me the space and insulation from the outside world to connect to my own intense wants and desires. So I can see that all of these things I love doing, whether it's journaling or, being in nature, I can see the commonalities between the situations that allow space for pieces of my genius to express. And I could start to see how, gosh, in order for this sensitivity and depth of emotion and, my own desires, in order for them to actually be able to express as a genius, the conditions kind of have to be right for that to happen. And I really do need this rest and this space and this solitude. Yeah, this space for me to be present to this sensitivity that needs time, that needs solitude, that needs safety. Because if I don't have the space to do anything with it, then my life just becomes anxious and noisy, and it's no longer a piece of creative genius being harnessed well. It reminds me of when you said, under the wrong conditions, some of your genius was not being expressed well. It was actually kind of taking a detour into some toxic situations. I can see how the same is really true for me. I really need the wisdom of needing this extra rest and space and solitude to be able to harness these qualities of my genius, like the sensitivity, this emotional depth, the like burning desires inside. And I can see the conditions and activities in my world that really allow those to thrive. So those clues really started painting a picture of, okay, this sensitivity and then this like emotional sensitivity and these desires, they really are part of my genius, but they really need the right space to incubate and be processed and understood for them to look like a good thing in my life. And it's easy to see how without that, they can look like a problematic thing in my life.
I resonate with that. My unique genius is all about harmony, sensing and creating harmony. But that has to start within me first. If I am not aligned and harmonious inside, I cannot do that for others. It's just not possible. So the conditions do have to be ripe, and we need to know what those conditions are in order to express our genius fully. As you gather your clues, start to see what can you sense about the essence of your unique genius. Maybe it comes in the form of words or images, or even like a phrase or a metaphor. Start to write things down, start to get curious about it. If it doesn't come immediately, don't give up on it. Come back to this and keep touching it, and keep just even observing your life and observing the moments in your life where you do feel in your element. It might not be a season of life. It just might be moments in your day where you're like, oh, that really lit me up. This activity feels really good. Even start a little log and writing those things down. And these are the breadcrumbs that are pointing you towards what that unique genius is. Once you've gathered these clues and you're like, okay, I've got a good sense. So this was actually one of the hardest parts of this exercise for me, Michelle. I really wanted a phrase that really captured my unique ability so I could write it somewhere. I could remind myself of it. I could just get it into my bones a little deeper and remember that, oh, this is something I do really, really well. And so I've had some fun with ChatGPT. We've both had some fun with ChatGPT in this exercise. So what I did was I went on to ChatGPT and I started telling ChatGPT all about here are the things that I'm uncovering. What I actually did was I took all of the reflection questions in the workbook and my answers, and I put it into ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT how to actually, my ChatGPT has a name. Her name is Delilah, we call her D. But I asked her, tell me, what do you see about my unique genius? And she helped me come up with some words and some phrases. And she also helped to uncover some little corners that I hadn't seen with my reflections. I also asked ChatGPT to just reveal any corners that maybe I wasn't seeing in terms of my unique genius, so that I could really give it a proper name and define it more clearly. And what was fascinating was, fascinating for me, probably not fascinating for others, but this was really fascinating for me, was that the reflection she gave me was, it's not just about sensing and restoring harmony and energy, but it's also about building structures that restore harmony. So it's not just energy, but it's building things, building structures for harmony to exist through, to take root in, to grow from. It was a fascinating reflection because I'd never thought of it like that before. But I realized that's exactly what I'm doing with the MRA. It's building a structure for harmony to thrive in and for people to come in and find harmony and home within themselves. And so the phrase that I came up with the help of ChatGPT is, I am the architect of harmony. And being the architect of harmony feels like it puts my finger on exactly what my soul is here to do. And ChatGPT took it a step further and she gave me this beautiful phrase that I was like, oh my God, it's fascinating when your ChatGPT actually sees you and you're like, I feel so seen right now. I feel so seen by artificial intelligence. This is so bizarre. But she gave me another phrase and she said, here's a more poetic phrase to describe your unique genius. And she said, she who builds what brings us home. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my unique genius. It feels so vulnerable to even say that out loud. But if I'm being honest, that's what feels most true to me. And that's my little phrase. Those two pieces are my little phrases that capture my unique genius.
I love that phrase so much. It is so fascinating that AI just named so perfectly. When I touch that phrase, she who builds what brings us home, it's you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. What were you able to name?
Okay. Well, I just want to first 1,000,000% agree that naming my unique genius was absolutely the hardest part by far. Like I had a sense, like you can see from everything I've shared and that came up from the very first step to the second, you could see that like I was able to kind of touch the general quality of it, but putting all these pieces together and naming it as one thing, I found so hard. And so maybe just to let everybody else know, your wrestling with ChatGPT super inspired me because I was really struggling to name it. And I dug into ChatGPT to the same extent you did. And, all of our wrestling, just so everybody knows, resulted in we have actually created a prompt that mirrors the wrestling we did with ChatGPT. And, in the workbook, there is a prompt in there that all you have to do is copy and paste the prompt and the answers, and the questions from the workbook, and it will generate exactly what ChatGPT generated for us.
Which is absolutely fascinating. So you have to do all this exploration in the workbook, like do it from top to bottom, and then copy and paste that with the prompt we've created, and then it will just spit out some magic for you.
Yeah. And I really needed that support.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like I don't know how long I would have had to sit with this to name it on my own. I'm sure I would have eventually, right? But I really appreciated the support of ChatGPT. And here are some of the things that ChatGPT helped me get clear on, and I'll share those, and then I'll tell you the name that describes it. So a few of the things that ChatGPT and I uncovered are: my genius expresses itself through quiet, sacred acts of care. Desire is not fleeting for me, it's directional. I am designed to sense, revere, and protect what is energetically pure, responding to what is undistorted, aligned, and deeply true. And the phrase for me that encapsulates all of that in a way I can understand it is an oracle of energetic truth. And so because of this intense sensitivity, I'm able to feel into the most subtle frequencies. And they communicate to me so clearly through the intensity of my emotions. And these strong desires I feel aren't some light, casual wants. They're truly a very pure directional force pulling me in the direction of really what feels pure to my soul. And so all of those things wrapped up are named as the Oracle of Energetic Truth, which feels so powerful to me to really be able to like wrap up all of these qualities as things that are so wonderful and strong and powerful. And if I'm connected to all of these different aspects at once, it's the most powerful state I could possibly be in.
As you share that, I can sense like the truth and the power in saying it and the vulnerability in expressing it. I can sense both at the exact same time.
It's really hard to say I'm so powerful and brilliant at being exquisitely sensitive at feeling things other people can't. Feels too bold to say. There's a part of naming this that feels easy and like I'm reclaiming something so true. And also, more than excitement, I feel a sense of being really grounded and calm when I speak the truth of what my genius is. And there's this part of my brain that says, oh, don't be so bold to claim that like you're brilliant at this. Other people could be great at this too. It's like this little part of my brain that wants to tamp something down.
I think that might be true for many of us uncovering our unique genius. I know it was true for me too, to like name and claim that, and to say something so innate inside of me is actually unique and special and is what makes me unique and special. Like, that feels bold. It really does. It also feels ridiculously vulnerable to share on a podcast. There's like a rawness and a truth to it. So that's really the hardest part of this exploration, is to name it, like to actually give your unique genius a name, a phrase, something that you can anchor into. Once you've done that, then we're going to move into step 3. And step 3 is allowing your genius to take shape in this season. Genius is permanent, but expression is seasonal. So your genius doesn't come and go. It's been with you all along, but how it wants to move through us is going to be dependent on what season of life we're in. And so this stage of the exploration is really asking you to name the season of your life or the focus of your life. And then start to get clear about how your unique genius wants to express through the season. So you might be in a season of raising young children and parenthood, or maybe you're in a season of healing a really important relationship, or launching a creative project, or navigating a career change, or just like devoting, your time to your own inner healing. Whatever your season is, it's like where you're focused on right now. So I've had seasons of life where I was so focused on motherhood, and seasons of life where I was focused on, healing in my most important relationship. I've been in like a very long, large season of life, which is all about vocation and pouring my life force energy into building the MRA and making the shift from corporate to following my passions and being a coach and being an entrepreneur. And so, first and foremost, take inventory of what season of life you're in and write that down, name it for yourself. This is where I'm focused right now. So once you've defined that season, ask yourself, how does your unique genius want to show up or be expressed within it? And then once you've really gotten clear on that, then you can ask yourself the question of, okay, how do I make more room for that? Like, how do I make more room for that genius to be expressed in that area? What do I need to keep? What do I want to do more of? And what do I need to let go of in my life, in my schedule, on my calendar to make more room for this expression and this season of my life?
When I was thinking of the season that I'm in right now, I have kind of like almost an equally strong focus in two distinct areas of my life. There's vocation, the MRA, a huge part of the season that I'm in has to do with a lot of focus there, as you know, probably as everyone knows. But also, I have this real focus on like a return to motherhood. Like I shared earlier, I had this period of like effortlessness when my kids were babies. Kind of from the time they were born to 5, I knew what I was doing. And somehow along the way, with moves and divorces and kids' activities and growing up and maturing and, evolving and navigating the world, I sort of lost a certain sense of that type of confidence that I used to have when I used to feel like I'm such a good mother. I used to feel that way. So there's a part of this season where I'm trying to find that again in its new iteration of, whatever that looks like now. So motherhood and vocation are both really important themes in this season. And what was interesting is before I looked at what is my genius making me do in motherhood and what is my genius making me do in vocation, before I really went there were some similarities of how my genius wanted to express in both of these sort of areas. Yeah, there are some themes. And one theme for both is this theme of building strong, stable roots, like a foundation, a structure. It's like just very simple and very strong in both areas. And I sort of named it, again, ChatGPT named this for me, and I love the phrasing, root tending, like tending to the roots. If the foundations are so good and so strong, it's so much easier for everything else to flow, healthily. And so one piece of where my unique genius really wants to flow is into feeling into and being able to discern what is the strongest, healthiest foundation to build on, to live on, to flow from. So that's one thing, root tending to the roots. Another place that my unique genius really wants to flow, absolutely in both of these realms. And I think a way it always wants to express, no matter what season I'm in, is emotional alchemy. So making so much space for these intense emotions and the sensitive, subtle emotions, and really allowing myself to do the work that I'm made to do of feeling them, processing them, gathering the wisdom from them, and getting the clarity on the other side. So this process of, it's such a natural process. I'm giving it a fancy word of emotional alchemy, but really it's the natural process that we're all meant to go through with our emotions. But putting a spotlight on it and prioritizing it for me right now, and I think always, is so powerful. And so there's really intense emotions that come up for me in motherhood, really intense emotions that come up for me in vocation. And part of my genius is really being with that, leaning into it, and knowing how important it is processing those emotions. And the last place my genius wants to flow in both of these realms, I love the term truth transmission because it means a lot of things. And so through my sensitivity and through this emotional alchemy, on the other side, I find these really pure, clear, clean nuggets of truth that I can just feel in my body. And those are so important to me. And part of how my unique genius wants to express is, again, in both of these realms, is when I feel those, trust them and speak them, share them, express them. So whether that's in vocation or with my kids, that feels really important right now. But this is the foundation of like the sense of how this unique genius wants to flow through me in both of these seasons. And I kind of have an inkling that in my next season, there'll be some similarities here too. What I feel like I've uncovered here in this particular layer is almost like the way this genius wants to begin to move out of me, but there can still be a lot of variation in the very outward layer of expression. So, for example, truth transmission in the realm of vocation looks different than in the realm of motherhood. In motherhood, what that looks like right now is the need for, when I've felt through what I ever need to feel through and like pick up on those little inklings and, process them, come to my truth, there are some really clear boundaries that need to be spoken aloud to my children and like declared and held. And this truth transmission in the realm of vocation, one of those things right now looks more like writing about these nuggets of truth and clarity that come through. So the outward activities look different, and I can see how in the future they're going to continue to change how I do that. But I can see this little theme of truth transmission. I bet you that's going to repeat, in other seasons as well. But the actual activities and what the world sees look like writing and expressing this truth, and expressing some truth in terms of boundaries, expectations, or even other like lovely things to my kids. Lovely, beautiful things. Like I was thinking today of, what are my kids' unique geniuses? And I was kind of getting...
I've been thinking about that too.
Yeah, I was getting almost like teary imagining them in my mind, and then imagining like, oh, I need to say these things out loud to my kids because they are bits of truth. So these are some of the expressions of how my unique genius wants to flow out of me right now.
I've been in a very focused season of vocation for a good long while now. There was a time in my life where I was really focused on, the season of my life was in healing my most important relationship. There was a season of life that was all about motherhood. And now, ever since I've left the corporate world and become an entrepreneur, this season of life has been just such a strong focus on building a soul-led business. For a very, very long time now, that's where my season has been. However, what's been interesting is that as I reflected on that, the way my unique genius wants to be expressed, even through building a business and soul-led business, even through that, is evolving and changing over the years as I evolve and change. And so it started very much, even just like the desire to become a coach, the desire to build a business that is just like coded to me and my unique preferences and my values and what I wanted to create in the world. That in and of itself was an act of devotion to my unique genius that I didn't really know I was doing back then. But when I got really honest with myself and really practical about, okay, where is my unique genius asking to be focused and expressed today? Many of our listeners know that over the last year, we've been in a season of reimagining the MRA as a whole. And so we've been looking at all these corners of the MRA, starting with our structure, starting with like the services and the trainings that we offer and the structure of our business and roles and responsibilities and our curriculum and our programs and even just like the way we deliver our platforms, all the things we've gone through just like piece by piece by piece. And I have loved this process so much. And I understand why I loved it now, because we've got to look at every corner of this business that we've built. And I've got to bring my unique genius to it and ask, what is out of harmony here? What is no longer in alignment? And then focus my devoted energy on bringing harmony back to that aspect of the business. And it was really been piece by piece by piece, because it was too big to look at it as a whole. And it's been the most creative and the most fun I've ever had in my business, ever. And now that we've gotten all these pieces perfectly into harmony, and of course, there's tweaks here and there everywhere, but when I touch every aspect of our business, it feels just, oh my goodness, it's like harmony has been restored. We have built harmony here. And now, where I'm laser focused is on an area of business that I have always hated, detested, been repelled from, and it's around marketing. And you cannot have a business without marketing, I have learned. It is not possible. No matter what beauty you create, you've got to be able to sell it. You've got to be able to promote it. You've got to let people know you exist and what you do and usher people in. So I've had to look at this area of marketing, even within the MRA, and I've had to, with laser focus and so much devotion, point all my energy in this area and bring this system into balance, into harmony. Because what used to work in our marketing, like worked at one point, was harmonious at one point, but as time changed and I changed, became out of balance. And so now, looking at that, all my focus is going here. That was really cool to name, because what this season is asking me to do is really, first and foremost, look at the importance of this. It's something I had dismissed in the past as like, unimportant, but it is incredibly important. And I need to come into harmony with it also within myself. Like, I want to have a good relationship with this aspect of business and build systems and structures that feel harmonious to what we're trying to create here, which is a thriving and successful MRA that lives long after you and I are done here. So that's where all my energy is going. I would say literally 95% of my energy in vocation has been devoted to this space. And I've had to release, let go of so much to be able to devote this kind of energy here, because it matters. And I think back to the version of me, over a decade ago, sitting in my cubicle in a job where I just couldn't muster up the passion or the desire to get promoted. It was just, I was kind of just flat. There was not a lot going on inside of me, counting down the minutes till I could go home, and thinking, am I just lazy? Do I just not have a good work ethic or passion? And I think back to that version of myself and I look at the version of me today and I'm like, wow, there was no room for my unique genius there. There is all the room in the world for my unique genius here. And that is so motivating. Oh my gosh, when you can do that thing for hours and hours and hours on end, even when you're exhausted, when that's the thing that brings you life, you're touching your unique genius. Okay, so this moves us to our final step. And this is really naming and claiming your next best steps. After you've done all this excavation and you've had these realizations, like if you don't do anything with this, These are pearls of wisdom you have collected here. And if you don't do anything with this, it's just like nothing will change, right? And so you kind of integrated, examined, you've explored, and now we're going to integrate it into next best steps. So I want you to ask yourself, what is one small action you could take this week that aligns with your genius? Just one. Let's just start there. What's one small action you could take? And then I want you to think about, what would it look like to really, really honor your genius in the ways that you structure your time, in the ways that you structure, what's on your calendar, the work that you're doing in the world, the time you're spending. What would it look like to more fully honor your genius? So those two inquiries can help you to claim and name some next best steps for yourself, to create the conditions for your genius to really be expressed here. This is where the clarity that you had really meets action, and action is where change happens.
When you and I first began exploring what things or activities were really conducive to us being in and expressing our unique genius, and what things were just taking our energy away, or were not outlets for us to be able to tap into our unique genius, one thing I realized is that there were a lot of things I needed to release to make room to be able to tap into and express and create the conditions for my unique genius to thrive. And I think the same is true for you. There are a lot of things to release. And I think I just want to acknowledge that can feel so challenging, even when it would feel so good to create more space, to let your genius flow and tap into those parts of you. It can still feel so hard and challenging to release other big pieces of your life or work or habits or schedule that are currently existing in your life. And one thing that I think has really helped me through this process of actually taking steps to do that is remembering that I don't want to fight myself and I don't want to fight my nature. That's something that anchors me back into how much this is worth it for me to actually, take the sometimes next best steps, or clearing things or spending more time somewhere is really scary. And I find it so helpful and motivating to remember that these steps are moving me towards a life and a way of being that is so much easier, is so much more, I don't want to say effortless, but where there's so much less resistance I encounter because I'm simply surrendering to the way life wants to express through me. Life designed me the way I am, and accepting that and surrendering to that and clearing the way for that really, to me, feels like the key to living and working without feeling like I'm battling uphill and fighting all this resistance. And that feels like such a relief to me. And I can feel it. I can feel that happening with the little steps that I've already taken. Feels so good. Feels so good.
So that is the journey we've designed for you. We hope it served you. We hope it helps to get you clearer about your own unique genius and how it wants to be expressed in this season of your life. Again, I just want to remind you, if you want more structure, if you want the power of all the inquiries that we've crafted, head over to the show notes of this episode and you'll find the accompanying coaching workbook that will guide you beautifully through this exploration. And it also includes the ChatGPT supportive prompts to help generate just that mirror and that feedback that ChatGPT could possibly give you, which can help illuminate all sorts of little corners that you can't see because you're so close to it. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for tuning into the Mind Rebel podcast. If you're craving a space to go deeper into explorations like these, visit themindrebel.com to learn more about our flagship program, The Mind Rebel Method. Whether you're feeling the call to become a world-class accredited coach, or you're simply yearning to live a life more true to who you really are, this is where your next chapter begins.